Good afternoon. I'm here with my guest, Francis Blessington. Thank you for joining me this afternoon.
Thanks for having me.
Okay. I'm going to read a note, a biographical note about Professor Blessington. Francis Blessington's first novel is The Last Witch of Dogtown. He has translated the Bacchae of Euripides and the Frogs of Aristophanes. He has published 2 books of poems, Landskip and Howl. He's a Milton specialist, the author of Paradise Lost and the classical epic and Paradise Lost, ideal and tragic epic, a student's companion to the poem. His essays and poems and short period have appeared in Harvard Magazine, Swanee Review, the Southern Review, Ibbotson Street, and many other journals.
There you go.
He has published a play, Lorenzo de Medici. A professor of English at Northeastern University, lives with his wife, Ann Taylor, who is a poet, fine poet in her own right, and she's an English professor. And to this day, he still works part-time baling hay in baling hay in Spain during the summer.
Yes.
Okay. So you're a Milton scholar, and I was going to ask you maybe a kind of a lead. You concentrated on Paradise Lost, and I'm going to ask you maybe kind of a leading question, but I mean Milton's portrayal of Satan, do you see any sort of parallels? And I know you try to, according to the catalog in Northeastern, you try to relate things to modern times, so do you see Satan in any contemporary figure?
No, I think it's a different world today than it was then. I think that in the 17th century, more people believed in Satan than probably believed in the reality of God.
Okay. Well, Satan was a fallen, wasn't he one of God's...
He was a fallen angel, and but Milton knew that one of the ways of getting interest in the book was to beef up Satan as a character and have Satan... he's not just... he's a scary enemy. I mean, he's somebody you've got to watch out for. Christianity has always insisted that if you believe in God, you have to believe in the devil.
Okay.
And so, and this, of course, led to terrible things in the 17th century, like witchcraft, and this lasted for, pretty much through Milton's lifetime.
Okay. All right. Now, what kind of guy was Milton? I mean, he was, I figure he was sort of, was he a brooding type of sort, or was he...
Well, he has been misrepresented, I think. Samuel Johnson's Life of Milton set the tone, and he didn't like Milton's politics because Milton was anti-monarchist, and Johnson was, of course, a monarchist, and Milton... therefore, he's palmed off as this scholar who just spent all his time studying. That's why the first wife ran away, although she did come back. But other people who knew Milton, especially towards the end of his life, said he told jokes. I mean, he was a compatible
a guy you'd want a beer with.
Well, he didn't drink beer or wine or anything like that, which is not a bad idea, because the 17th century had about the worst beer and wine that's ever been produced. So.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. Oh, okay. That's too bad.
So, but yeah, he was serious. I mean, if you look at some of his poems in which he tries to joke, he's not
very good at it.
He's not very good at that. Okay, so he was somebody who had to take everything very seriously, had to believe that really God was inspiring his poems, and that he had to, overcome the burden of going blind.
Yeah. What did he go blind from? Was it a sort of glaucoma, or?
It's sort of a glaucoma. People know now what it was, but they didn't know at the time. So he had many painful operations and things.
Imagine in 17th
pouring
century.
hot wax in the eyes and tearing it off. There was all sorts of terrible things that he had to go through. But he said that blindness is not a tragedy. That the tragedy is not to be able to bear blindness.
To what?
To bear it.
Bear it. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Just to go through it and see your sight slowly diminishing.
And don't give up on. But he went blind when he was 44 years old, which is relatively young for somebody who spent his life reading, studying, using his eyes. I mean,
he saw a lot though before he went.
Yeah.
Now, we had a reviewer, Dennis Daly, who you knew way back at Northeastern, and he reviewed your book, your play, your translation of the Trojan Woman for the stage by Euripides. How do you try? I mean, again, the emphasis. Dennis noted that you had some. You bowed to some modern sensibilities in your translation of the play. How did that come across?
Well, when I was working on Trojan Women, I worked with a theater company in Boston, and so I went through everything that they were doing, from getting the actors to developing things. And so what happened was I started to aim at, can an actor say this to an audience, and can an audience understand this? Because if you don't do that, you're just lost. I mean, you can't. There are two arguments in translating ancient Greek. One is you should preserve the structures of the ancient language. But on the other hand, you have to make it contemporary poetry somehow. You can't go too far down. It's got to be somewhat elevated, or it doesn't work. But you have to find a balance between them.
Well, they take Shakespeare and put it in a disco or something like that. What do you think about that?
Well, I haven't seen that work very well.
Yeah.
In theory, I guess it could.
Yeah.
But if you do that, you just change the genre, which is fine. You want to have a good time, you want to put it over the top and so on. But it doesn't have the same effect that a play by Shakespeare would.
Right. Yeah. So you were working on that fine line, you said, between making it accessible and keeping it
effective. And, I mean, they have to feel like the Greeks had a different attitude towards humanity than we did. They saw humanity as more elevated than we see it today. So you can't just go down and just use four-letter words. I mean, you have to have some sort of buoyancy, some sort of formality. And then on the other hand, you can't just stuff owls in. You can't just have a pretentious translatorese that is going to do it. And a lot of people had done that. And so you had all sorts of scholars putting these translations out, and they're just unreadable. I mean, they're just, their accuracy, I'm sure, is perfect, but nobody wants to hear it.
But the classical, translators of the classics years ago, like for instance, Petronius, I think, where they would characterize all these fellows did evil things when actually they were pedophiles and having a great time.
Oh yeah, well that's true of Petronius.
Yeah.
That works with Petronius.
Yeah, but would you just want to say they're doing evil things, or do you actually want to get explicit? I mean,
no, you have to specify, and Petronius does specify. But don't forget, Petronius is satire. He's making fun of the decadence of the Roman Empire.
Yeah. Okay. All right. But it was decadent, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. The emperors were degenerating mentally, and from there on down, I mean, things were going out of control.
Now, you had a novel last, Witch of Dogtown?
Yeah.
Now, that came out a while ago, but Dogtown being the place in Gloucester, right?
Yeah.
It's supposedly people hear voices there, people who drowned in that area when the tide is out. Did you go out there and research it? Have you ever experienced any of the ghostly happenings out there?
I didn't experience them firsthand. I wrote much of the book there in Dogtown, and the way the wind.
When you say you wrote most of the book there, what do you mean?
I actually wrote it there.
Like you're out in the. You had a house or something?
No. I just got my notebook, and I'm going out there and writing on site.
So why did you do that?
Well, I tried to pick up inspiration from it.
Did it work?
I think so. It's our only ghost town around here.
Yeah.
And actually, a lot of the witches went there. People who were cast out other places after Salem ended up there. So a lot of decadents, escaped slaves, for example, gathered there, and a lot of the people who were just mad, and it became a very interesting place from that point of view, and all sorts of stories about it. And so at the end of the 19th century, a Globe reporter named Charles Mann, a lot of these people were still alive, and he did an oral history of Dogtown. So that was very valuable, because some of those people, all those people had experienced all this, and they were still alive at that time.
Great. Wow.
And now I'm carrying on more witchcraft. I'm doing a book on Milton witchcraft, and I'm also teaching an honors course in witchcraft coming up next semester.
It's witchcraft, as the song goes, right?
Yes, witchcraft, but it's very popular right now, movies, books, all kinds of things.
Why do you think it is?
I think people want something more than just the rational. They want the intuitive. They want to believe that everything is not just spelled out scientifically and by statistics.
Now, I was going to ask you about, we were just asking you about your Dogtown. Also, I was going to ask you, I was reading one of your poems about Alcatraz, and you go to that island, where the prison was, and you see all, the cells, the confinement, the echoes of past inmates, et cetera, et cetera. And at the end, you ended, we perform at the end. You said we perform. Are we performing for our own escape from our lives, or are we performing?
We're pretending we live in a more exciting, violent world, and we do. So just like the major figures there, Al Capone, or Birdman Stroud, went into movies. They had movies made of them.
I remember the Birdman with, what was his face? The Birdman with...
Burt Lancaster.
Burt Lancaster, yeah.
Right.
That was a great movie.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we go looking for these kind of charges. And that was the point of, it's Alcatraz for today. It's not real Alcatraz. It's not like being there and what was called no escape. You were there and you stayed there, and you died of the cold, or you got raped, or you got things were very serious problems there. But we take it lightly. It's our vacation. We go from...
well, that's what I was saying, trying to escape from the daily grind of our lives. You go to work, come back here. You said there's some excitement, at least. There's escape.
Right. Some excitement. We participate in it with our imaginations.
And escape from our own... the banality of our own lives.
The banality of our own lives.
I mean, I'm not saying...
As if we could go on shooting sprees, or, we could live. What attracts us to the lives of the gangsters and the violence and so on? I mean, there's
you want to act out, but you can't.
You want to act it out. Yeah, it appeals to something
like
witchcraft that is deep in the human soul.
Remember that movie Network, where they start yelling, "I'm mad as hell, and I'm not going to take it anymore." Their heads are sticking out. Sort of just were released. It was a great one. But anyway. I digress. So I was also... your wife, Ann Taylor, is a poet, and she has a new book coming out, or had been out recently. How is it as a poetic couple? Are you competitive? Are you supportive? Do you help each other with writing? Or?
Well, we've gotten to the point where we do help each other. So we read each other's manuscripts and make suggestions. Not suggestions that we always want to hear,
right.
But...
so you can be critical, yeah.
Well, you have to be critical.
Yeah.
You don't get anywhere just by being supportive. I mean, this is great.
But then you have to think of the marriage, though.
Yeah, you have to think of the marriage, but you have to accept that. I think she also accepts the fact that, if you're going to get better, if you're going to improve this poem, someone once said, a novelist who came to read at Northeastern, the most important gift for a writer is to know it's not good enough yet. And so... my old teacher at Harvard was Seamus Heaney, and he would always say, well, what does this poem need now? We got to this point, but what are we going to do now? We've got to go further with this. So I think that she understands that.
How was Heaney as a teacher? He was your teacher?
He was a good teacher.
He wasn't much older than you when you were teaching.
No, he's just a little bit older than I was.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah.
And I thought he was, I thought he died in his late 60s or so.
He was 73.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But he was inspirational, I think, to know somebody like this.
Yeah.
That was really...
Yeah, it was great, yeah.
That was really...
How was he as a teacher?
He didn't do too much. He encouraged people, and he told me later that he's going to change his style. He's going to get much tougher with the students and so on.
Yeah.
But the students were ready for anything. I think he could have done it any way he wanted, and the students would have learned from him. So you were just waiting to see how he was going to look at something, and that would be very important. He would also have us read poems and translate some poems, and that was also very helpful.
Translating is difficult to. I remember speaking to Jim Cates, who's a big translator. You know him.
A lot of translating, yeah.
Yeah, and it's, as the old cliche goes, a lot can be lost in translation, right?
Right. Well, there's an old problem with that. Professor Frost said, poetry is what is lost in translation. Goethe said poetry is what comes through in translation, so you can take your pick. It depends. Obviously, you lose more in lyric than you do in narrative or dramatic poetry. But otherwise, you don't get in contact with these other poets in other languages if you don't do something like that. Yeah.
Now, you have a new book coming out.
Yes.
Could you tell us a bit about it?
Yes, it's Deerbrook Editions. It'll be coming out next year.
That's up in Maine, isn't it?
Yes, up in Maine.
A friend of mine had a book published, Wendy Renan, about actually Quiet Room. It's a good book, but anyway, go ahead.
Oh, good. Good to hear.
Yeah.
Yes, so I was reading some poems up at Salem, and another poet I know, Susan Donnelly, was there with us.
Great teacher, poetry teacher.
On the piano, and she said, after I had read some poems, she said, "Frank, all those poems sound like they're coming from the underground somewhere." And I said, "That's it." So I took Poems from Underground and made it the title of the...
How do you mean underground? I'm sorry.
Well, it was, sometimes it's an imprisoned emperor, sometimes it's Alcatraz, sometimes it's the dead. It's about taphophobia, the fear of being buried alive. So a lot of them, one way or another, are done by people who are generally outcast a lot from the society, or have become outcast, like the emperor who was imprisoned.
Do they interest you, outcasts?
They what?
Do they interest you, outcasts?
Well, I think poets are always somewhat outcast.
Yeah.
To be a writer at all or an artist, I think you have to be somewhat disenfranchised with the world that you live in. Otherwise, you'll just be happy there and you won't do anything about it. But a writer is somebody who constructs another world, who constructs something else, at least part of the time does that.
Interesting. Well, I want to give you about 11 minutes to read some from your own work, whatever you want to read, and that would be great.
So I will, why don't I read Alcatraz for today, since you
I mentioned it.
Brought that up. And Alcatraz for today is in parentheses because it is actually a dock sign, and it's telling you to sign up for Alcatraz, just for the day, of course. So, Machine Gun Kelly, Birdman Stroud, Il Capone, the street fighters have flown to film. Once safely on board, we pass honking sea lions who nudge others off their rafts on Pier 39, renewed. The fog is endemic, and tales of shock. No one escaped and lived. No one mentions rape. Water is choppy. On the aisle, a celebrity signs his book. He wears a retired bank robber sweatshirt and says it wasn't voluntary simplicity then. We know why we're here, to sit in the solitary boxes, to hear the old audio memoirs, to feel cage buried within cage, and cough still in the air, to see loom out of the fog stacks into the yard, a brown pelican like a troop transport sent to quell a disturbance of kitchen knives and turnkey shot a bleeding cell. We wanted to be in no escape, to dream revenge in colossal sprees, to swim with hypothermia. We came to rehearse. And this is a poem called Refrain. It was about my son's accident when we were skiing in the White Mountains. Refrain for my son. In the shadowed sunset, your snowboard rebels. Your head strikes ice and cancels all. Fish-eyed in knit hat and sleek black vest, you lose the track. Snow turns pure forest. You strike me with your fist like a dying camper whose snow bag failed, all fatal eye and raving lip. Your arms stiffen into a transfixed saint. The helicopter lights snow red with its klaxon. Below you I hear the radio's strangled poetry as I drive the winding byway to the hospital. There you sit, clear-eyed, only memory of the fall gone, the gossamer curtains barely lifting like snow. In the shadowed sunset, your snowboard rebels, your head strikes ice. The next poem is called The Swift River, and there is a place called the Swift River, lots of places. This is in central Massachusetts, and it's for a while anyway, a concealed birthday poem. And the question is, what are we looking for when we fish and do other things, or maybe everything? What are we looking for? The Swift River. In the sun-punctured stream, water dances to gold cups in vases. Dazzled over by mobbed mayflies, the adult spinners living only minutes, at best days. But I search for fish, the unseen darknesses guarding themselves under the shelving, resting from old competitions, or bullying insults nosing the surface beyond their zone. The flash in air of a mermaid trout free of the landing net, furtive marches perhaps too deep to identify, shifting plates of the dead leaf bottom. These white caps the rocks endure will stream when I am not. I who could stumble off this rock into the swift river and fall deeper than thought, only the cork handle twisting above this peaceful eddy. No one near, not the friend who left me the fly box, nor the beloved who bid me, great birthday, so useless. The child waiting at home with the present. Where the swift river slides swifter, swifter, I cast the water-heavy line, gliding down at pools and dams and eddies and oceans. I reel for the leap of the strike. The next poem is a poem about gabbro. I went to an exhibit of gabbro. Gabbro is the kind of stone that makes up much of the coastline of New England. And I had read another poem about gabbro, and I thought, well, this isn't very good. Maybe I can write a better gabbro poem. So this is about gabbro. Gabbro is calcic plagioclasa. Gabbro is sedimentary, igneous rock. Gabbro is rock bottom. Gabbro is rocky zero. Gabbro is bedrock and rock bed. Gabbro is the rock of ages. Gabbro is rockweed. Gabbro is sea rock salt. Gabbro is the great rock crab under the sea. Gabbro is rock and roll from Africa. Gabbro is volcanic rock chips. Gabbro is Rocky Mountains. Gabbro is. Usually, I write about things that are new to me when they strike me, and when I was in Puerto Rico, I went to the cockfights, and this is about the cockfight. Behind scratched glass, they preen and screech, scrunching to get out, steroided gladiators waiting the careful taping of the spurs. The gamblers chat and sprawl, eat chicken from little white boxes. Front bets begin at $500. The weighing and dusting, the neck for hidden blades, done. Each is slugged with a chicken teddy. Pointing at matching betters, they scream white, blue, the heavy slamming the gray vinyl rim of the tiny green coliseum. Beyond the roar, the birds silent as Achaeans, their flaring white necklaces, spitting tongues, slash kick and head axe, their 6 rainbow pounds into Julian breast and helmets of blood. The buzzer. The now destroyed champion cleaving still his bird, even more dead. The men settle their differences, return to their high seats like gods. This is a rhymed formal poem about Dionysus. I translated the Bacchae of Euripides, as Doug mentioned, and I did feel the influence of Dionysus as I did that translation from the first time I read it as a graduate student.
And doesn't it deal with the theme of rational, the king?
Yes, that's right. Dionysus is the spirit of the emotions let loose.
Right. He's
happiness and he's death.
Okay.
You drink and you get happy. It's the blood of Dionysus. You do it too much, you get dead. So the ambiguity fascinated me. So this is about...
But he won out, didn't he?
He wins out because emotion in Euripides, emotion wins out.
Yeah, yeah.
All the Greeks thought they were being rational. Aristotle, Plato, they thought they were going to figure out the world. Euripides came along and said, no. That isn't what lasts. In the end, it's the emotion that lasts.
Like Trump. He speaks emotionally.
He knows.
Yeah. I'm sure he's very familiar with this. Yeah.
Dionysus. The ivy snaked his mask. A smile hung up to ask nothing. Mere dark behind, while hate and love entwined, to spur his chorus line. When city drunkards meet, his roar invades the street. To panic, saints and wives, till on their tomb he weaves his holy ivy leaves. His vine hangs brown and bare, incised on marble air. Its arms trick out green buds to nourish the boy god, poured out to other gods, whose blood swells sweet and jets through the heart's rivulets. Although the fearful town revolts and votes him down, he hides in potted ground. A sliced back plant, unharmed by thrashing winter storms, till bollock skein of leaf, the god whose root was knifed, reblooms in mirth and grief.
Thank you very much, Frank, for joining me on Poet to Poet, Writer to Writer.
Thank you very much for having me.